Hola, buenas noches. Vamos a empezar. Bienvenidos a todos y gracias por acompañarnos. Antes de comenzar, quisiera recordarles que el idioma principal de esta reunión será en español, con interpretación en inglés. Sin embargo, algunos de los presentadores hablarán en inglés, así que asegúrense de tener audífonos. Otro recordatorio para los comisionados: cuando vean el papel que Jennifer nos va a mostrar, por favor, hablen más fuerte y un poquito más despacio. También el micrófono, por favor. Y eso es todo. Gracias. Quiero agradecer a Mari y a Francisco por proveer los servicios de interpretación. Y ahora vamos a empezar a pasar lista. Cuando diga su nombre, por favor, diga presente.
Ahora comenzaré a pasar lista. Por favor, digan presente cuando su nombre sea llamado. Yesenia García. Judith Guerrero. Yolanda Guzmán. Rogelio Nabor. Stephanie Perez. Jonathan Ramírez. Corina Rodríguez. Nicolás Romero. And John Ross. Gracias.
Ahora pasaremos al tema número 2, comentarios del público. Tenga en cuenta que la comisión no podrá hablar ni tomar medidas con respecto a los puntos que no están en la agenda. ¿Alguien tiene un comentario público sobre algún tema que no está en la agenda?
Ahora ha llegado el momento de los comentarios del público en general. Si desea hacer un comentario público, por favor traiga una nota de orador a la secretaria. Cada persona tendrá 2 minutos para hablar. Tenemos alguna tarjeta de orador. Cuando diga su nombre, puede subir al podio. Sí, otro. ¿Se podría pasar al podio, por favor? Sí, otro. ¿Se podría pasar al podio para el comentario público, por favor? Up to the podium, please.
Afternoon or evening, my name is Steve Oku. I have a nursery in Pescadero. The family's been growing flowers for over 120 years. Initially in Mountain View, then we built the nursery in Pescadero 70 years ago. And we had no intention of having to build farm labor housing. But because of the Coastal Commission, and then nobody could build a house, anybody wanted to live on the house, Post would it basically buy an old place, renovate it, displace farm labor, and so we had to start building housing. from what I read in the newspapers, the direction of farm labor housing seems like the public wants to build and find a site for high density farm labor housing that serves people. I believe from our experience, housing should be on the farm. It makes more sense. What I think is going to happen, it's going to take 10 years to try to get permits for these massive developments. You know, anybody trying to build anything out here knows it's going to take 10 years. And then once you get the permits, the public can find out about it. They're going to be nimble. We don't want this in our backyard. And there's going to be lawsuits. It won't get built. Guys are going to get together and say, okay, we need to find another site. Process is going to start again. And it's never going to get built. You know, we have 9 homes on our property. 7 homes are for families. And in the last 6 years, the children of these families, I've got a graduate from NYU, graduate from Berkeley, graduate from Sacramento State, University of Portland, Chico State, San Jose State, San Francisco State. It's incredible because of the housing that we provided, stable workforce, that we could do that. I'm proud of that. And I don't think any other housing can provide those kinds of results. It's difficult. I don't know how the hell we did it, because it's so difficult to build housing, get the permits, get the water, get the septic, and to pay for it all. We're in the flower business. Flower business used to be good. And then government got involved, passed NAFTA. And I don't know if you're old enough to hear Ross Perot speak and talk about the giant sucking sound, sucking the dollars out of agriculture here and everything gets imported. And so, you know, the dollars aren't there. We're trying to maintain our housing. The regulations just to provide water for my housing cost each of my housing units $400 a year. They don't pay for it, I pay for it.
I'm sorry, I interrupt. You had 2 minutes and we would love to hear more about it, but we do have to move on with our agenda.
Okay, last point is farm labor housing should be done on the farm. We should be working for government grants to allow farmers to build housing, get grant money. It's a pain in the butt for a farmer to have to maintain all this housing. So there should be programs for maybe like a Puente group to basically manage it, but the farmer needs to control it. He needs to be able to say, hey, these guys are hoodlums, they need to be out of here, and police his own housing. But if you do that, you're going to get results like I do. And public policy that says farming should just be for ranches, 1,000 acres, 500 acres, it doesn't work. It needs to be small parcels. You know, for nurseries, for organic farms, for year-round employment. Row crop farming that only is good for 6-7 months, and then the farm workers have got no employment. That doesn't work. You need full-time employment. So work for those kinds of policies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cristo Hernández, si podría pasar al podio, tendría 2 minutos. Cristo Hernández, por favor, pase al podio.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Rocío Ávila. Yo no puedo decir que soy trabajadora de tiempo completo en el campo, pero también siembro y le ayudo a mi hermano a trabajar. Entonces sabemos la gran necesidad de viviendas para trabajadores del campo que hacen falta aquí en Half Bay y alrededores, Pescadero y otros lugares. Sabemos que si nuestras familias no tienen un lugar donde vivir, donde podamos descansar, esto es difícil para nosotros tener un trabajo donde la gente está trabajando más de 8 a 10 horas.
que es muy pesado. Entonces, eso es lo que estamos pidiendo, luchando por nuestros derechos, porque nosotros tenemos derecho a una vivienda digna y justa para todos, especialmente para nuestros hijos, que son los niños los que más sufren en estas circunstancias, cuando tenemos que compartir un cuarto con 2 o 3 de ellos. Entonces, gracias a la comisión de trabajadores que se está haciendo hoy, nunca había venido a esta junta, pero tal vez es importante. Y también conocer nuestros derechos como trabajadores. Saber que tenemos derechos y no hacernos menos que ninguna otra persona. Porque nuestro trabajo es importante aquí en Estados Unidos, como es el del abogado, el del doctor, porque sabemos que si los trabajadores del campo no trabajamos, ellos no comen. Así que tenemos que seguir luchando por nuestros derechos y no ser menos, siempre estar también arriba. Gracias. Gracias. Ahora, Mark, por favor, si podría ir al podio, por favor.
I'm Mark Billigan. I'm here tonight as the president of the board of directors of Puente Pescadero and also Pescadero residents. I just wanted to bring up the fact that we know that there are at least 2 farms for sale on the coast that provide housing for not only individual farm laborers and men, but also for families. Puente undertook a new strategic, a development effort to look at a new strategic plan a few years back. In that process, we not only looked at talking to members of the board of directors, but also to members of the staff, members of the community, and participants in our programs. One of the main things that came up out of that, and one of the new strategic highlights that we had, was for advocacy for housing in the community, and affordable housing and farm worker housing. We know that we're at risk of losing a lot of this housing without creative solutions, and I would advocate that the county needs to work at creative solutions for water, both available drinking water as well as wastewater systems that are not in the current plan as they're set up now. If that doesn't happen, we're going to lose these homes, and if we lose these homes, we lose these people, we lose the farms, and we lose the diversity in our community that we all value. So basically, what I wanted to say is just like, I think this commission is doing amazing work, and we really need to work forward together. It's to everybody's benefit to keep these homes in the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Finalmente, Drew Gamet.
Muy buenas noches a todos, sobre todo miembros de la comisión. Gracias por esta oportunidad de hablar con ustedes. Soy Drew Gamet, soy el director de educación para adultos para la Escuela de Adultos de la Costa, que es parte del Cabrillo Unified School District. Y discúlpame, preparé todos mis comentarios esta noche en inglés. Voy a convertir. Our charge is an adult school. And as an adult school is to provide workforce training and other types of courses for adults on the coast side from Montara to Pescadero. And as our school's charge is also governed by the California Framework for Immigrant Integration. And while the programs that we offer are focused on teaching English, on getting students, adult students, high school diplomas or equivalency, finally supporting students to get short-term professional certificates that can lead to medium wage jobs, we significantly have broader outcomes for our students. Immigrant integration under this framework means that beyond English proficiency, we also teach students about accessing healthcare and wellness services, financial literacy, providing for their children and elder family members, and the opportunities that are available for education and career advancement for themselves as adult learners. Additionally, we also teach students about participation in civic and community life, which would obviously bring more people to a meeting like this. However, we need to support our students. We also need the support of their employers when it comes to accessing educational opportunities. Likewise, we as a school are constantly striving to better understand what we can do to help our students get to class and make sure that once they're in class, they're not being interrupted. My hope is that in future agendas of this committee, the educational needs of farm workers can be addressed alongside critical priorities such as housing and healthcare as we discussed this evening. Any of you would like to discuss this issue further? I have left my contact information with the clerk, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Parece que ya no hay comentarios del público en este momento.
Pasaremos al tema número 3 de la agenda, discutir e identificar las prioridades de la Comisión para el 2023 al 2024. Hoy comenzaremos a trabajar en el establecimiento de metas de prioridades. Como hemos discutido en las reuniones pasadas, se supone que la Comisión debe desarrollar un plan de trabajo anual y hacer recomendaciones a la Junta de Supervisores. Por lo tanto, queremos identificar unos 3 objetivos claves para la Comisión de aquí a 2024. En la pantalla vemos una explicación del proceso. Es comprender el contexto de trabajo en la costa del condado, escuchar la opinión del público sobre sus prioridades y objetivos. La comisión comparte ideas sobre objetivos y debate. Hoy la comisión aprueba 3 objetivos clave: reunirse en comités ad hoc para añadir detalles a los objetivos, y los comités presentan los objetivos y los detalles de la comisión en pleno en la reunión del 13 de septiembre para su aprobación y adoptación.
What was the representación en inglés? And I think there's a interpreter. So before the Farm Worker Commission starts to prioritize and identify their priorities for the next year, it's really important to understand what the county has done, what the county's doing, and where do you fit? Where does this commission fit in the big picture? You guys are an extension and an advisory board to the Board of Supervisors. You influence the change, policy decisions, and planning for the entire Farm Worker Commission. This has never been seen. I want to congratulate you again throughout the state of California. You guys are a role model. But I think it's important as we look at that is, and I'm just giving you some ideas here, is you have the library system, the healthcare system, education, business community, farm worker associations, and resident government and housing. Everybody comes together and you get input from all of these entities and comes here to help you guide your decisions and guide your priorities. The outside boxes, it was a prettier slide, so sorry. The outside boxes are just examples. So perhaps you want an update from a hospital or a clinic, because we're talking about that there's a need for healthcare clinics. You could ask, hey, we'd like to get an update, because that's a priority for us. But maybe you get information and input from residents. I'm just calling out specifically Moonridge, but it could be any number of ones. And they come and be a public speaker and say, this is what our needs. And then there's also the Agriculture Commission. If you haven't attended, they also have priorities. And perhaps you want to know, what are you guys working on so that we could collaborate or not duplicate work? and really stretch the efforts. But I think it's also additionally important to know that there's work that's already happening with the county. There's work that exists, and we're here to provide that input. I think in the 2 meetings ago, we had the supervisor Mueller come out, county executive Mike Callaghan, and talk about the work and efforts that are happening with the farm worker task force. The Farm Worker Task Force is a multidisciplinary department coming together, all the departments coming together and doing an inspection of all farm worker housing conditions. Those continue today. Actually, one of my staff were there, and they go out as a team, they inspect and they report and identify if there's any housing conditions, issues, or anything that needs to be corrected. But not only that, we also look to say, how can we continue to promote and serve and continue? We're not looking for evictions. We're not looking to stop it. We're looking to how do we improve it and make it better. And so those are efforts that are existing. And so your role is like, you're thinking, well, how do we get involved in that? How do we get, and so the county, next time you come, Justin Mates, our deputy county executive, you met him, I think, before as well. He will come and do a report out. So we have it scheduled that they will report back to you and give that information, a report on how many have we done, what are the findings, and what the status is. So as an advisory and a commission, you get to ask for those type of things. As you identify your priorities, you get to then say, hey, we'd like to get an update on X, Y, and Z, or if you want to hear specifically from a provider, a vendor, a teacher, we can bring those experts to the table to help guide your decisions and help influence any change. But we really want to say is how you are the Farm Worker Commission, the blue, right, blue. You then report, and we have somebody here at every one of your meetings from the Board of Supervisors, from settlement there, please wave your hand in the pink. And she actually goes back and talks to the supervisor, reports out. He also listens in on the session and report them. And really you get to influence any policy decisions, any changes, any or needs, if you think we should create a policy. So those are going to help dictate and guide how you want to prioritize your efforts as you're meeting here tonight. But it's important that the community understand what the county's doing on the entire coast, not just in one community, but the entire coast, and how that will play out in the future. Your priorities are working documents, right? You set a priority for the next, you set a couple priorities for the next year, but perhaps a new issue comes to light. You could always revisit your priorities, but it's important as you guys think of your priorities to also think is, what's the outcome that I want to see? For affordable housing, what does that mean? You want to see X number? You want to see new developments made? If you could be very specific, that's going to help in priority and planning, and then helps the county as well identify what those resources should be like. I think that's what I have. Any other questions? If you guys have any questions, happy to take those questions, but I really wanted to give you some context around what the county's doing, and as well as inform you and bring, and more importantly, make it available that we're going to continue to report back to you. You are the influence of change. Your roles are critical to the services and what's getting happening along this coast. And so as we talk to other providers in the pink areas, we continue our messages, come here, come to this commission and raise the concerns, because this is the advisory body. So there could be, and we have one up there, the Farm Worker Affairs Coalition. We're saying, come here, This is the advisory board. This is the body that has the influence to change at the board of supervisors. And so that's the message that I really want to get across is our outreach and our message is for the public, the community, the greens and the pinks, all those factors to come to your meeting because you are, your position is very powerful. And so we really want to make sure that you get all the information that you need to advance your priorities. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, soy María Aragón de Habitat. I'm going to ask the commissioners to individually share their priorities, issues and outcomes. So I want you to think about those priorities for the commission. What are some of the objectives most important that we want to work on in this commission for the next 1 to 2 years? As Emma said, identifying the question of the theme and the result we want to obtain. So do we want to start with any commissioners want to give me some priorities that they'd like to work on? And then, do you want me to write it up on the board? Do you want Stopper? You got a marker? And then we want to rank those priorities in importance. Who'd like to start? Peter?
I want to focus on increasing or creating a program that brings knowledge or know your rights sessions, but more at a basic level. And what I mean by that is basic, like for the farm workers to know that they are entitled to a lunch break, that they are entitled to overtime after many hours. I think starting at the basic level, whether it would be like a series of, 4 or 5 sessions, and understanding the implications when you fill out a tax document, but very like low level, which I think it's a thing that not a lot of farm workers are aware that they have so many rights. And that, a lot of the abuses towards workers' rights happen because they don't know the basics. I mean, one of the things is like minimum wage. There's people that are being paid $16.45 and minimum wage is $16.50. So they need a series of educational sessions to know your rights.
Okay, anyone else?
Creo que hemos escuchado y hemos hablado mucho aquí de que se ocupan hogares para los trabajadores del campo de bajo costo. Pienso muchos detalles, poquitos detalles. Muchos detalles. Pues una cosa que quería agregar es que sí es difícil eso, sabemos eso. Entonces, tal vez empezar con que los hogares haya más hogares con los empleadores que existen ahorita, pero también la realidad es que los dueños de esos campos pues, pueden hacer mayores y la familia no quiere seguir esos negocios y si nomás cierran estos trabajos, pierden las personas sus trabajos y también el hogar. Entonces tenemos que mirar a las dos cosas para que sea algo más de largo plazo. Y mi segunda prioridad es que se suba el índice de ingresos para el programa que tiene el condado de aseguranza, el programa de ACE. Este programa empezó en el 2007 y los ingresos son muy bajos. Desde entonces ya tiene 16 años y no se ha cambiado nada. año tras año suben muy poquito esos ingresos. Hay personas que están ganando el pescadero 15.50 la hora. Entonces, para un mes es 2.480 y para que una familia, esa persona califique al programa de ACE, ocupa ganar menos de 2.265. Con este dinero, ¿cómo le haces aquí en el condado de San Mateo? Es imposible. Son mis dos. Gracias.
Gracias. Douglas.
Sí, yo tengo un comentario. Sobre vivienda también. Debido a la demanda y a la escasez de vivienda, en la regular por esta región que es agrícola, la costa sur, pues demandamos más viviendas para los trabajadores agrícolas, a bajo costo. Porque ahorita habla Corina sobre salarios, 16.50, 8 horas al mes, alrededor de 1.660 dólares alrededor, más o menos. Que no ajusta para una familia, trabajando solo jefe de familia, no ajusta pagar una renta de una casa que vale 2.200, 2.300 dólares. Ahí tiene que hacer un overtime, no tiene que hacer un tiempo extra la esposa trabajando también, para atender a la familia. Vienen los gastos, vida y otras cosas. Entonces, sí, esto daña la economía y daña la salud más que nada. Porque físicamente tienen que trabajar más para poder hacer un pago extraordinario, porque la necesidad y la demanda a veces encarecen más la vivienda. Entonces, estamos hablando al respecto de que los dueños de los ranchos deben de aportar las viviendas, pero en este caso son para personas que están solas, a veces. Es muy escasa la oportunidad que exista una familia, específicamente en los ranchos.
So it's for individuals and families.
Ok, entonces nosotros admiramos aquí la región de Media Luna, la admiramos porque también en el pescadero tenemos un sueño, una necesidad de tener un Monridge allá también nosotros para trabajadores agrícolas, así como se han creado centros habitacionales para trabajadores agrícolas, también nosotros exigimos y pedimos y demandamos un centro habitacional para trabajadores agrícolas. No sé si sea mucho pedir, pero soñar no cuesta nada. Gracias.
¿Algo más?
Hablando con los trabajadores o compañeros de trabajo en mi área de trabajo, en la compañía que yo trabajo, una de los 3 tópicos más grandes de los estados que están ahí ya es la paga, que es el mínimo muy bajo, la seguridad médica es muy costosa o no da servicios buenos, accesibles, y la vivienda es muy costosa, tienen que trabajar mucho tiempo para poder pagar su renta, ¿verdad? Pero también algo que viene de muchos empleados o trabajadores agrícolas que vienen de otras áreas locales o lugares más pequeños, siempre que vienen a ese establecimiento siempre escucho, a mí me daban ese entrenamiento de seguridad. Yo no sabía que tenía que hacerte un examen médico para usar una máscara para aplicar posiciones. Hace muchos comentarios positivos sobre los entrenamientos de seguridad que también tenemos. Y yo pienso que algo hablando con el mismo dice, eso hablando, me gustó el tópico que dijo Judith, de hacer un outreach education program, pero también me gustaría involucrar la seguridad. En el término de la seguridad, yo sé que muchos tienen las compañías, va a venir OSHA, va a venir esas compañías regulatorias que no queremos que vengan a los establecimientos a veces, pero también si hacemos uno que es de aquí del condado, en el cual no no afectamos a las compañías más que ir a ver qué es lo que son las necesidades de los empleados, qué están decidiendo, qué necesitan, ¿verdad? Este tipo de entrenamiento de seguridad, y creo que eso sería algo también importante, ¿verdad? Porque allí encontraríamos problemas como lo de las viviendas en mal estado, ¿verdad?
See if I got it right. Increase outreach. We talked about the housing, healthcare, and with
And employees,
policing,
employees.
employee safety. And when you mean employee safety, is it about health safety or public safety?
So it's health, occupation.
Occupational.
Anyone else have other thoughts?
So, medical income to be able to qualify. Receive the medical income guidelines to allow more people to qualify, which can be a savings, to the medical system. And because more people would be insured and less people would be using the emergency room, for medical care.
Affordable healthcare, or if you wanna, is it something else?
It would be up to them.
But it sounds like you have some recurring themes that, and
We're
so,
checking the boxes for
Yeah.
reserve certain things.
and so we want to rank these by priority that we want to work on first, or?
I'd like to know if anybody else has
Yeah.
anything else to give everybody an opportunity. I think it's important that, you know, everything goes on the board. Nothing's wrong. There's no wrong answer.
Yolanda y Rogelio, algo en los que les gustaría trabajar o que nos enfoquemos.
Para mí la prioridad sería las viviendas, pero sobre todo tomar en cuenta pescaderos. Bueno, nosotros venimos del área de pescadero porque hemos hablado aquí sobre viviendas, pero solamente en Farmworker Bay, pero también tenemos necesidades en pescadero. Entonces, para mí la prioridad es viviendas, salario y lo del seguro médico también, porque con el salario que ganamos es bajo, pero cuando queremos calificar para el seguro médico no calificamos, entonces también es una prioridad.
Rogelio.
Yo también estoy de acuerdo con todos del pago del salario que nos pagan como nosotros que somos trabajadores del campo, y que también igual que la compañera Yolanda es muy bajo lo que nos pagan a todos, no nomás a nosotros. Todas las personas que trabajamos en el PIB ganamos 16.50 o hay personas que ganan 15.50. Entonces a veces es muy difícil para nosotros porque no nos alcanza para la renta, para los biles. Y luego también, como dijo la compañera, estamos hablando de vivienda, pero todas las veces que hemos venido nomás hemos hablado de Farmworker Bay, no hemos hablado de pescadero. Y es el mismo problema que hay aquí en Farmworker Bay, hay en pescadero, hay en todas partes. Entonces sí, me gustaría que nos enfocamos todo lo que es parte del condado, no nomás en esta área. Por ejemplo, lo que es parte del condado, desde Año Nuevo hasta Pacífica, buscar una solución para todas las personas que lo necesitan. Y luego, como en el área de pescadero, que no tenemos un centro médico, me gustaría que hubiera algo, como nosotros que somos trabajadores del campo, donde ocurrir si nos obtenemos un accidente o algo para los primeros auxilios, porque ahí no tenemos un centro médico o una clínica donde ocurrir. Y como la ciudad de Farmworker Bay está bien porque tienen la clínica de hospital, pero nosotros estamos un poco más retirados, entonces sería una buena idea que nos enfocáramos no nomás en el área de Farmworker Bay, que nos enfocáramos en todo el condado o toda la costa.
I know we've been talking a lot about housing and it's on, the list already, but I think not only affordable housing, but adequate housing, running water, electricity, and enough space, you know,
someone spoke about that during the public comment. Having enough space when it is families, a lot of these homes are just for, single, people. However, there are more families on farms now, and, after a lot of years, they continue to live there, and more kids, they continue to have more kids, so I think it's very important to have enough space, for, like family health in general. I think also more programs, in the county for migrant families. I think, I know education wise, there is already, I think expanding though, I'm not familiar with Pescadero and their migrant program, but I think expanding early childhood, programs for migrant families.
Don, do you have anything to add to this?
I would just like to also address housing. I know that everyone has already mentioned that. But I would appreciate the commission's opportunity to influence how the county approaches the solutions to housing. I have a specific case in point that I think speaks to Steve Oku's sentiment that he expressed earlier about housing being on farms. I think that the solution should include both on-farm housing and housing that isn't linked to employees. But one thing that I'm aware of, because my farm business is in the process of trying to obtain funds through a loan program that the county has, is that as far as the person administering that loan knows at this moment, that we will be the last ones to receive that funding. And they just changed the program so they're more generous and makes it possible to build more quality housing. And it's kind of held up as a solution to the housing crisis, and yet it isn't being funded. And what's being talked about now is these larger developments like the ones in Half Moon Bay. And I know that that isn't really a solution for our workers, because people aren't going to commute to Pescadero probably to work for us. So I would like to just kind of bring that one up and hope that as we talk about housing, we'll have the opportunity to make specific recommendations to the county that can be heard.
Great. Anything else?
I would go over the list to make sure I captured everything from this group, and then we can do. I'll go backwards. So we talked about, housing loan program for operators and increasing that access. Some additional mobile housing development, similar to what's happening in Half Moon Bay, but in Pescadero. We talked about your basic rights, kind of an outreach and education, not only in basic know your rights, but it sounds like also there's outreach and education on many different ideas, and really increasing that awareness. Increasing farm worker housing on farms for individuals and families. Making affordable health care, as well as changing the income guidelines to make it eligible, because wages sometimes don't allow you to be eligible, but yet you're working under low wages. Development in Pescadero, similar to Moonridge, I'm repeating that one. Increasing farm worker wages and employee safety, occupational health from our farm worker community. And I called it disaster preparedness, but it's a really emergency response, and having a center place, a location, and having a better plan for our Pescadero community. Adequate housing conditions for single families and some basic needs. And then early childhood education for farm worker families. Miss anything?
You didn't miss anything, but I would add affordable quality healthcare. Quality to be affordable, yeah.
Oh, can I just add?
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Can somebody consider childcare?
Well, this is where you're gonna open up right to public.
So, yeah, we're gonna open up to the public, to hear what their thoughts are, so. You wanna do a separate sheet or keep it all together?
Whatever people would like us to do.
I think checking out the recurring themes will work and then writing some new ones. It seems that we have a lot of the recurring ones.
Do you wanna take a public comment or do you wanna, how do you want to?
You can take public comment.
Ahora ha llegado el momento de los comentarios del público. Durante este tiempo, los miembros del público, si desean hacer algún comentario sobre el tema número 3, por favor traiga una nota de orador a la secretaria. Pero, si podría pasar vida al podio, tendrían 2 minutos para hablar.
¿Perdón? Ya. Buenas tardes, soy Rita, directora de Puente, y la primera prioridad y de lo que estoy hablando es de cosas que he escuchado de la comunidad. Obviamente tengo mi opinión personal, pero esto que estoy comentando son comentarios que he escuchado directamente de la gente, particularmente de pescadores. La primera es vivienda. Lo hemos escuchado en estudios que se hicieron en el 2016, en el 2019, en 1994, entonces creo que debe de estar en la prioridad de la lista. Y específicamente quisiera pedir el apoyo de esta comisión para que le pidan al condado de San Mateo que considere la extensión del agua pública de Pescadero a otros lotes donde se pueda desarrollar vivienda. Esa es la barrera principal que tenemos y hasta ahorita el condado nos sigue diciendo que no se puede, pero no nos dan una buena explicación por qué, y yo siento que deben de invertir en hacer estudios para realmente evaluar esa posibilidad, porque si podemos extender el agua pública, podemos construir más vivienda dentro del área que ya se desarrolló en Pescadero. El otro tema, hace poco hicimos un grupo de enfoque con gente de Pescadero que hablaron fuertemente de transportación o de la falta de transporte público en Pescadero. No tenemos ni un camión, autobús, nada que nos conecte con Media Luna, con La Honda o con Santa Cruz. Y están haciendo una prueba piloto aquí en Jafón Bay que queremos su ayuda para que extiendan esa prueba piloto a Pescadero lo más pronto que se pueda. También el condado tiene un terreno en Pescadero en una zona que nosotros conocemos como Big Hollow. Es propiedad que ya les pertenece a ellos. Es la misma propiedad donde están los tanques de agua de CSI-11, que es el distrito de agua de Pescadero. Y no sé por qué el condado no está observando esa propiedad como una posibilidad para desarrollar vivienda. Entonces también ayúdenos por favor con eso. Pescadero, lo que yo he escuchado no es tanto que necesite un lugar de primeros auxilios o de emergency preparedness, es más bien una clínica. La gente necesita servicios dentales, servicios de salud, servicios pediátricos, clases de nutrición, doctores, enfermeras. Nuestra comunidad se merece, como dicen aquí, toda la enchilada. Y lo otro es que le han pedido a nuestra comunidad muchas veces que dé su opinión, y lo que yo he escuchado últimamente es que la comunidad se está cansando porque lo que no ve son las soluciones. A mí me dicen, Rita, nos invitas a un montón de talleres y pocos grupos de enfoque, pero no se está logrando ningún cambio. Entonces, tenemos tanta esperanza en ustedes como comisión. Y lo último es que hay mucha gente que está aquí de Pescadero y hemos escuchado que se dice, lo primero para lograr un cambio es to show up, ¿no? Hacer presencia. Y está aquí la gente, está presente. A lo mejor no se van a animar a hablar en el micrófono. Y ustedes muchos saben que no es la manera en la que se van a animar a hablar, pero acérquense a ellos, tienen mucho que decir. Y si la primera opción es que vengan, aquí están, ojalá encontremos soluciones para Pescadero también.
Gracias. Ahora, Guadalupe, por favor, si podría pasar al podio, tendrá 2 minutos para hablar.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Guadalupe, y soy del pescadero. Yo he visto en muchas meetings que hablan mucho y poco acción. Como ahorita estoy viendo que están hablando de agua, de electricidad, de clínicas y todo, pero en realidad, si nos dan todo eso y no tenemos viviendas donde vivir, ¿para qué queremos agua? ¿Para qué queremos clínica? Si lo que más importante son las viviendas. Teniendo viviendas y bien para vivir como Dios manda, a lo mejor no nos enfermamos mucho, porque si ahorita van a la escuela de pescadero, la escuela no tiene agua. Muchos años la escuela de pescadero no tiene agua. Tienen que comprar agua para que tomen los niños. Si van a sus baños, yo pienso que la cárcel está más limpia que los baños de pescadero. Si los niños no están limpios su agua, su escuela, se imagina las casas cómo están. Si la escuela es del condado, es del distrito, y si está la escuela así, ahora se imagina las casas de los rancheros donde vivimos. Si ustedes nos pueden ayudar o hablar en el condado, que por favor pongan más atención en las viviendas. Es lo que pescadero, y no creo que no pescadero, sino que todo acá como Hammond Bay, y pues esperamos que en pescadero no pase lo que pasó en Hammond Bay para que nos puedan ayudar. Gracias.
Gracias. Ahora sí, se podría pasar a todos.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Penny Kim, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Public Policy at Ponte. First, when we are talking about farm workers' rights, I would really respectfully ask the commissioners to frame farm workers' rights also as the immigrant workers' rights, labor rights, and also racial socio-economic justice issue. And this is not something that only Puente is advocating for, but this is something actually state of California has written in their response to County of San Mateo's housing element draft. They said that County of San Mateo has a lack in the analysis of the racial and ethnic disparity and accessibility to affordable housing in our communities. So I think it's really critical for these commissioners to take a look at that. And I also would like to prioritize housing, especially in Pescadero, for our farm workers. Number one is precisely the fact that now we are hearing a lot from the county representatives that, oh, we are doing something about housing, look what we're doing in Half Moon Bay. But I think frankly speaking, it is really important to acknowledge that county really hasn't done that much for farm worker housing in general until the tragic shooting happened in January of this year. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, Pescadero and other South Coast communities, we are living in unincorporated neighborhoods. We don't have a city government to represent us. And, we don't want to see another tragedy to make more housing to be built for farm workers in our communities. And I think it's also important to recognize that.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're trying to get your attention, I apologize.
And I think it's also important to recognize that we need to have housing for farm workers both on and off farms. All of us, most of the people know that you don't want your employer, your bosses also to be your landlords, right? We want to clear separation between our private life and your professional life. And that type of dignity should be afforded to farm workers as well. And I think it's also important to be, to stay positive and hopeful. It's true that there will always be not in my backyard, factors. But I think we are also seeing from the traditional environmentalist groups who use the approach. Can you slow down a little for an interpreter? Who used to be just anti-development is not good for our natural environment or the ecological preservation. But one day actually have had talked with, local environmentalist group, especially the both veteran environmentalists and the younger generation who want to bring the newer framework of environmental justice, the affordable housing development and the environmental protection can coexist together. So I think this commission can play a really critical role in bringing those new insights and being a leader in recognizing the fact that development for the houses and the protecting environments can coexist and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I'm sorry to interrupt. You have other people. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Jacqueline, Abor, si podría pasar al podio.
I should remind everybody to speak slowly, to allow the interpreter to interpret clearly. And if I put this up, let me slow down.
Right, thank you. Hello, my name is Jacqueline Nabor Gómez. Mi nombre es Jacqueline Nabor Gómez, soy hija de Rogelio Nabor Martínez. Y la razón que yo vine a hablar es porque, pues voy a hablar en inglés más que en español, porque en español me pongo un poco nerviosa, pero tengo 3 prioridades. La primera es, yo he mirado a mi papá, pues, sufrir de dolor o de quejas, que está muy cansado. So, una prioridad sería una clínica mobile. So, que una nurse, un doctor fuera a cada rancho y ayudara a los trabajadores en una manera como si tienen dolor o una enfermedad, que tengan un mobile clinic que vaya a los ranchos. La segunda cosa sería higher wages, subir los pagos. Es algo más pronto que pasa. It's a priority. Higher wages is a priority that could happen sooner than housing. And if we get the wages higher, it can potentially mean maybe afford the rent costs or, help out in buying a house. And I think it's kind of ridiculous that the people who are out breaking their backs in the sun for 8 hours have the lowest wage. It's ridiculous to me, and I don't understand how everybody's aware of that and nobody does anything about it. And then the third is to reinforce Rita's point is transportation. Reforzar el punto de Rita que hizo de transportation. En Pescadero no hay accessibility for buses, any resource of transportation. So we have to, if farm workers have to either pay somebody else to take them to point A to point B, or they have to find some way to get themselves there. And I'll slow down because that's the end of my time. Gracias. Drew Janet, si podría pasar el podio, por favor.
And if I could just remind everyone, we would love to hear all of your comments, but we do have 2 minutes. We do need to be mindful of everybody's time, so try to be concise, please.
No voy a hablar demasiado. La única cosa que quise agregar a esta conversación, sé que hay cosas bastante importantes para el corto plazo. Sí, viviendas, sueldos, seguro médico es bastante importante. Es algo que no podemos olvidar. Pero la educación es súper importante. La cuenta que nos dijo el señor sobre los niños, los hijos de los trabajadores que fueron a universidades importantes, estudiando cosas súper importantes. Pues, ¿qué pasó con los trabajadores, los papás? Son iguales. Y simplemente para esta comisión, por favor, mientras que están pensando en cosas de corto plazo, urgencias, cosas que necesitamos arreglar, pero ya. Es también importante de pensar en el largo plazo. Y educación es lo primordial para esto, dando espacio, dando tiempo a los trabajadores para que puedan estudiar, para que puedan realizar sus propios, por favor, simplemente para sus. Gracias.
To confirm, you're talking about academic.
Academic studies.
Okay, Patrick, si podría pasar.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Patrick Horn, and I'm recently elected to the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Council. We don't have a town government because we're unincorporated San Mateo County, but we do have the Municipal Advisory Council. And we advocate for the general welfare of Pescadero. So what I'm really glad to hear at today's meeting is so much priority for Pescadero. I want to emphasize we need the housing, we need a medical clinic, we need the dignified life for the farm workers. So I add my check mark to those priorities, and I put an exclamation mark, Pescadero. Pescadero should be a priority. We are a community that deserves equity, and we're forgotten so often in situations like this. And so Pescadero should be a priority.
Thank you. Tenemos dos notas de orador y serían los finales. Si podrían pasar mañanitos al podio, tendrías 2 minutos para hablar.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Margarito Gómez. Y creo que se ha tocado muchos temas, pero no he mirado que toquen a lo que es cómo funciona el sistema laboral. Muchas de las veces estamos ajenos a eso, a ver muchos trabajadores que en realidad no sabemos cómo funciona, y muchas de las veces nos oprimen por esas razones. Y me gustaría que se tocara también el tema y que hubiera más información acerca de eso para que se distribuyera tanto en las granjas como en los lugares más lejanos, porque muchas de las veces la desgracia que pasó acá en Capón Bay, que realmente es doloroso, a veces pasan por tanta opresión que tenemos muchos empleados, trabajadores. A veces es tanta la opresión que explotas, y a veces te dicen que tienes que llevar una queja, pero a veces no es suficiente una, y puedes llevar 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, o puedes seguir, y de todas maneras no te van a hacer caso, porque el sistema a veces funciona creo mejor para patrones o el condado, y se siente desprotegido cuando pasan esas cosas, y tristeza me da por lo que ha pasado aquí, pero y me gustaría que nunca más pues, pasara, no solamente aquí en el área, sino en todo el mundo. Gracias.
Gracias. Última nota sería de Rocío. Por favor, pase al podio y tendrías 2 minutos.
Va a ser algo muy corto. Lo que yo estoy viendo es que el condado está viendo que hay mucha necesidad de vivienda. ¿Qué está haciendo el condado o qué está haciendo el estado para que eso se convierta en una emergencia de vivienda? Para que los permisos sean más rápidos para la construcción de las viviendas que se están pidiendo. No sé si la comisión puede también poner presión o preguntar qué se necesita hacer para que los permisos puedan ser más rápidos para la construcción, habiendo tanta demanda de vivienda de parte de los trabajadores agrícolas, trabajadores esenciales. Pienso que ellos, si están viendo la necesidad, tienen que los permisos durar menos, porque son muy largos los permisos, como la persona que dijo que está durando cuánto tiempo para que puedan darle el permiso para la construcción. Ellos tienen que saber que es una prioridad y una necesidad.
Así que por favor, que sea una emergencia de vivienda. Gracias.
Gracias. Ahora ha llegado el final de los comentarios públicos.
Gracias a Emma y a todos ustedes por brindarnos sus comentarios. Como están viendo, Emma y su equipo han tomado notas y creo que ahora vamos a tomar el siguiente paso.
Some of these are comments. And some of them are priorities. So I'm just gonna recap what I heard differently from what was discussed. Where I heard repeating themes, I put text or clusters. But what I also heard very specific was, public water access to Pescadero, access to public transportation to Pescadero, the idea of Big Hollow. Is that what I heard? Big Hollow?
Bean
Hollow. Huh?
Bean Hollow.
B?
B-E-A-N.
A-M.
B-E-A-N.
Oh, beans.
Como el frijol.
Okay,
El
great.
frijol.
Bean Hollow, potential housing development. Mobile clinics or clinics. Or doing farmwork. What some of the comments was make this actionable and solution based, the priorities, that's a recommendation. Education, access or increased education, I think that are priorities from an academic studies or academia and allowing time. There's also another priority is to make Pescadero a priority in your planning process for unincorporated areas. And to improve the permit process for housing, comment as well. Hope I captured everything.
Okay, so we want to do some work on this and form the ad hoc committees to work on these issues. So there are a lot of overlapping themes, and while all of this is really important, we have to start somewhere. So we're going to look at creating 3 ad hoc committees that Urban Habitat's going to work with and support you on. So we want to rank the most important things that or maybe things that come up the most. So we can start with ad hoc committees. And then Judith, do you need to vote on it?
I think we need to identify the 3 top.
Do we have any posters or any stickers? We have posters and stickers. So I think what we'll do is give you guys some time. We'll give you,
So it's 3 stickers.
3 stickers for each of them. And then take a moment to review what they've identified as priority, including public comment. And then I think that will help you in the next step. So each of you will have 3 dots. And then say, these are where we think the priority should lie. We're gonna have 3. Get up, look around the, look, put the dots, take a few minutes. And that, all of them are very important. But what is the commission gonna prioritize and put for the next year? I think acknowledging that it's not less important, but it's just, they can't cover all of it in 1 year. And make it actionable and realistic. priority. What you have influence over, where you can make a change.
So it looks like we have affordable healthcare, know your rights, and then a tie between housing development and farm worker wages. But I'm also wondering if farm worker wages could be folded into know your rights. Thoughts on that, Commissioner?
I think that would work.
And I think you do.
Can you make sure it says quality?
Quality, actually, I wrote that down, access to quality affordable healthcare. You don't want me to write up there, I just drop you.
And then, do we call it outreach and education? And then different topics, or is it know your rights? Outreach and education.
Yo sí pienso que sería como educación, porque también una cosa que escuchamos un poco era opresión que me hizo pensar que me hizo pensar también en salud mental y también lo que estábamos mencionando de OSHA, todo es algo bajo educación.
And the subcommittees can decide which of those subtopics they are. So we'll put outreach and education. Is that okay? All right. And the next one is housing development in Pescadero. Right?
Yes, I think affordable housing, I think maybe housing as a group, because you can talk about affordable housing in Pescadero. And I do want to say that things overlap, so transportation can also be overlapped and not as part of like the land use. If that's something that you want to talk about, transportation to get people to and from work from their housing.
So what I heard here is specifically farm worker housing in Pescadero. Very different than access to affordable quality healthcare. So we're gonna, am I correct to say the priority here is looking for opportunities to have housing development affordable, specifically in Pescadero, what I see as a priority, or double check?
No, that sounds right. Thank you. And I think I might be able to say the South Coast, because I did hear other areas besides Pescadero, so the South Coast.
farm worker wages, did I understand that we'll put that at the topic of your rights?
Yes.
That could be just moved into your rights. Sounds like a great list, a good start.
Ready to start. And again, a lot of these ideas can be found in these three items. So anything that seems like it might have been missed, it's not, doesn't mean that it can be folded into that as part of that. So with that, talk about forming these ad hoc committees. So we're gonna have the commissioners work on ad hoc committees. The committees cannot vote.
So we probably need a motion first.
Yes.
To say that these are their priorities, if we could get a motion from someone.
Ahora me gustaría pedir una moción. ¿Quién inicia la moción? Are we doing the motion to approve our three priorities?
Three priorities.
Stephanie, do you want to do it, please?
Yeah, you're having. How to.
Just say, I would like to start the one.
I would like to,
Motion.
I would like to motion, approval of the three priorities,
And then three priorities.
which are access to affordable quality healthcare is one, 2, outreach and education, 3, affordable housing development in South Coast, like Pasadena.
Are you, does your motion include to, also include to create subcommittees for each of these categories?
This motion also does, or will include, subcommittees within the three priorities that are listed.
And a second.
I second this motion.
But also, ¿puedes decirnos o alguien decirnos cómo se dice I motion to y I second that motion en español? Para, pongo un ejemplo, porque para la próxima le toca a Yolanda.
Quiero hacer la moción de aprobar estas tres prioridades. Yo la respaldo esa moción.
Gracias.
Okay. La moción fue hecha por Stephanie y secundada por Corina. Procederé ahora con una votación nominal. Cuando nombre su nombre, diga sí, no o. Do you say abstain?
Abstain?
Yes.
Abstention.
Abstener. Okay, Yesenia García. Votar sí, no o abstener.
Yes.
Judith Guerrero.
Yes.
Yolanda.
Sí.
Rogelio.
Sí.
Stephanie.
Sí.
Jonathan.
Sí.
Corina.
Sí.
Nicolás.
Sí.
John.
Sí.
Motion passes.
So let's form these subcommittees. And we're deciding tonight who's gonna serve on them, Judith, or do you want to discuss that?
We can decide today.
Okay, so we have these three subcommittees. So per the Brown Act, the subcommittee cannot be more than a quorum. Has to be less than a quorum. And you cannot meet outside of the subcommittees with, otherwise it's violating the Brown Act.
Can you be a member of more than one subcommittee?
You can. Okay.
There's no more than 4 members per subcommittee. So there's 9 of you. And so I think that the best thing is to, if you want to raise your hand of what interests you. And if you're what you think you can do and participate in, and those meetings will not be public. You can meet remotely, you can meet over coffee, but it can't be more than 4 of you. To not pass the Brown Act. So it's not gonna be in this setting. So you guys can find ways and opportunities, but it'll be led through and worked through urban habitat.
Correct.
They will help in guide the facilitation. of it. What's your interest? Oh, second.
Outreach and education.
La primera. Corina.
Sí. La primera. Yolanda. Sorry. Primera. Jensen, with the white. Yes. No more. That one.
Primero nos vamos.
Usted diga.
I will take affordable housing development in Paseo.
Nicolás, la primera.
No se puede.
Puede, Nicolás.
Ya tengo cuatro. Oh, unless somebody else wants to get off.
La tercera.
I will take outreach and education. Please.
Anybody else? We have these two.
Sí se puede estar en dos, también, la última también Corina.
Sounds like we have 3 subcommittees. And we have a full membership for, in the first one, access to affordable quality health care. Corina, Rogelio, Yolanda, and Yesenia. For outreach and education, which you guys could talk about and break it down into different topics. As well as Stephanie, Jonathan, and Judith. And then affordable housing development in the South Coast, i.e. Cascadero, or most probably in the South Coast, is Judith, Nicolas, John, and Kurt. Great.
Great. And I passed out, you have in your packet a worksheet about a plan of action for each of your ad hoc committees. And what you want to do, just to explain it a little, that when we're talking about the work we're doing here, is we're talking about the kind of changes we make. We can make structural changes or we can make really substantial changes. And just remembering that what we've learned, that the goal is to support the good, stop the bad, and create policies, new policies that are equitable and change the lives of people in our communities. And then when you are thinking about your subcommittees, and we'll go over this again with Lisa and myself, is remembering what we taught you about the equity rubric, who benefits, who pays, and who decides. And with that, you know, yes.
On each of these groups, it would be nice, ideal, if we could identify a lead that we could work with, where the urban habitat could call and kind of get, like, let's start with one person. If that's too early to decide today, but it would be nice to have a point of contact at least for the first session. So for access to affordable quality healthcare, Corina, Rogelio, Yolanda, Yesenia, who can we call?
Puede ser a mí por un tiempo y luego.
Yeah, it's just for la primera, and then we can open that up.
Okay.
For the first one, we just need to start. And then outreach and education, Stephanie, Jonathan, or Judith. I hear Stephanie, yay. And then for affordable housing development in the South Coast, Judith, Nicolas, John, or Corina. Nicolas, what did you think?
Okay.
Okay. All right, you have your contacts.
Great, so we'll be contacting all of you to set up a meeting, so review this. We'll go over it more when we have our meetings with you to talk a little bit more about it, but digest it, we gave you an example. things to think about. And then Judith wanted me to also mention, for those of you commissioners who might be interested, we also run a program, if you like what we taught you here over the past several months, we run a program called the Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute, which is a 6-month intensive training on policymaking around land use, housing, and transportation justice. And our application is open in the fall, in September, right after Labor Day. This past year, we led our first bilingual cohort, and we had our first bilingual fellow who went on to be appointed to the Brixton Met Board. So it's something that we are very interested in continuing that program. So it's not limited just to English speakers. We have the capacity to make it available to Spanish speakers as well now.
And one last thing before, Karina, Stephanie, and Nicolas, if you could let us know if you prefer contact by phone, text, or email, that will help us. So just let us know after what that your preferred communication, just for this one time, what that would be.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure for us to get to work with San Mateo County and the commissioners on this program. And we look forward to continuing the work with you.
Ok, ahora pasaremos al informe final. ¿Alguno de los comisionados tiene algún reporte o algo que nos gustaría compartir en este momento? Como no hay nadie que va a compartir, gracias. La hora son las 8:30 y con esto. There is no update from Board of Supervisors. Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perdón. Marisol sí tiene un update. Ya quería que nos fuéramos, pero Marisol tiene información para nosotros.
But then I haven't come yet. Okay.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Marisol Escalera. Trabajo en la oficina del supervisor Mueller, el distrito 3, al cual ustedes pertenecen. Voy a hacer que nos quedemos un poquito más tarde para que nos dé más hambre. Pero, no, nada más les quería reiterar que desde la última vez que nos reunimos, a partir del mes de junio, nosotros recibimos aviso del estado de California, básicamente del Departamento de Vivienda y de Desarrollo Comunitario del estado de California, cuando nosotros solicitamos fondos para construir viviendas para los campesinos especialmente, eso sucedió alrededor del mes de abril. Entonces en junio nos dieron respuesta y nos otorgaron $5 millones para fondos para poder construir viviendas. Vamos a poder dar más detalle cuando tengamos más información sobre la construcción o lo que se va a hacer más específicamente con el dinero. Pero nada más es uno de los desarrollos que hemos tenido últimamente, desde mucho más después de que tuvimos nosotros la última reunión aquí en la comisión. Entonces, si ustedes tienen también preguntas, les invito a que vengan a nuestra oficina. Ya también tuvimos la apertura de la oficina aquí en la costa, en el área de Princeton, que queda cerca de Coastside Hope. Somos casi vecinos de acá de Chile. Vengan a nuestra oficina o llámenme para hacer una cita para que podamos hablar ahí en la oficina. También les invitamos a que vean el calendario que se publica en la página del Condado de San Mateo, de las fechas en que el supervisor tiene sus visitas comunitarias, como por ejemplo a veces tenemos las sesiones de café con el supervisor los viernes. Todavía tenemos que publicar las nuevas fechas, pero eso está disponible para ustedes, para saber más de lo que estamos haciendo. Les menciono también que hemos escuchado de las necesidades que suceden aquí en Half Moon Bay, también en Pescadero, como dijo acá nuestro miembro de la comisión hace ratito, desde Año Nuevo hasta Pacífica, ¿verdad? Pero
también al otro lado del cerro de aquí del 92. Aparte de esto, también les quiero reiterar que también estamos mirando las necesidades de los rancheros, de los agrícolas y pues obviamente de los campesinos. ¿Ok? Y muchísimas gracias por darnos sus voces, dejarnos que podamos trabajar en conjunto con ustedes y les damos gracias de nuevo por la paciencia que nos han tenido para poder llevar a cabo el trabajo que estamos haciendo, que mucho de este trabajo dura también por medio de procesos más tiempo, pero estamos ahí echándole ganas, como se dice. Muchas gracias y buenas tardes.
I'm going to give you a quick county update on behalf of our county executive office. You may know or may have heard there's San Mateo County has what is Measure K dollars. Measure K dollars really are taxpayer dollars, taxes that go to support where services are needed. For the last 10 years, we have been operating and providing those services out into the community. Many of those are services that you receive, whether a portion of that is being paid for food insecurity, housing, poor agencies, healthcare, etc. Many of the same issues you're talking about today. But the need is much greater than what the county has. So the county now is going to prioritize how to spend approximately $60 million for the next 4 to 5 years. Today, we met with nearly 100 community-based organizations to get their input to say what the need is from the clients and who they represent. But now we want to get the voices from you, from the residents, to really say and shape, this is where we should prioritize these $60 million. And I want you to think about that because we're going to have a community meeting, a listening session. But we are going to do something. And it will be actionable. It will decide and determine how money goes from the county to community-based organizations. We don't have, the need is much greater, so we have to break it down into 4 priorities. Those 4 priorities are going to be centered around children, families, housing and homelessness, mental health, and emergency preparedness. Now we know you may be asking from an aging community, well, I don't hear seniors, but seniors really hit all categories. But these listening sessions, we're going to have 2 on the coast. And the first one will be, and we will get flyers and information to you, but I just wanted you to be aware that we're going to be doing this countywide. But we need your voices to help influence that change. Because a decision will be made and we'll report it back to the Board of Supervisors in October. And then what is called a request for proposal. It's where we say, here is what the community has prioritized. And this is the money that's available and people have to apply for it. And that's how services get out into the county. That will be published at the end of this year, but it'll be guided. The guiding principles will be what the community tells us should be the gaps. What are the needs? And very specific. What is not just access, but access to what? What does that mean? And talk about that very specifically. So we will provide information, but I want you to put it on your calendar. And I invite you to come. I invite the council, the commissioners to come. I invite the public to come because your voice matters. The first one will be on August 9th. And that will be at the Mid-Coast Community Council, or actually at the Supervisor Mueller's office in El Granada. So come and meet his place, but it'll be there on, August 9th at 5:30 in the evening. We'll have dinner too, so please come have some food. And then the next listening session for the coastal community will be in Pescadero, from 6 to 7:30 on August 15th. More details to come on location, but those are the dates, those are, for coastal community. So please, come, invite your friends and family to really participate in that. If we're really gonna have, it's not county led. County is not part of this. We're bringing an entire, facilitator, to guide, so that we're not influencing and we don't get to see it. And it really is your voices, your influence, and we will report it back. And you'll see next year on July, when we make decisions and who gets money, it's because of the voices that come from these meetings. So please come, it's really important. I just want to give you a heads up. Thank you.
Just repeat the main issues with children, families, and housing, and what else?
It'll be children and families. It's very broad, right? Individual families and seniors. Housing and homelessness includes families and seniors. Mental health. And then emergency preparedness. I think I've seen emergency preparedness on one of your areas there. So talk about that, and then make that a priority for your community in the coastal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Very good. Any updates from the commissioners? Okay. Gracias. Son las 8:40 y con esto concluye la reunión.